Hello, everyone. This weekend we celebrate the third Sunday of Easter. We hear that beautiful story of Peter and John bravely standing before the Sanhedrin, the Jewish leaders who commanded that they stop preaching about Jesus, and yet they said we must preach and obey God's command. And we also hear that wonderful story, another appearance of the resurrected Christ to the fishermen, the disciples, and Peter, and another fire involving Peter and us. So I want to begin with, though, here in our chapel with a little bit of festive Easter among us friars, with a story of another Franciscan you probably don't know. It is St. John Jones, who was a Welsh Catholic and who died in 1598. And the reason I want to use him as an example is because of part of the bravery that comes out of the scriptures this Sunday. John Jones became a priest, a Catholic priest in Elizabethan England. And if you know anything about English history, that was a tumultuous period in which once Henry broke with the Catholic Church and Rome, and his daughter Elizabeth took the throne of England, then Catholics and the Church of England, of course, never, ever got along for years. And John, as a priest, was caught celebrating the sacraments and imprisoned for 3 years. And after he was released, then he left for Rome, and while in Rome, he became acquainted with the Franciscans and entered the order and returned to England. Now that in itself is pretty brave, but John was caught again on trumped-up charges, tortured severely, convicted of high treason, and eventually was hanged, drawn, and quartered. He was canonized by Pope Paul VI in 1970, along with 39 others known as the 40 English martyrs. So John Jones was a brave example, similar to Peter and John. After they were arrested and drawn before the Sanhedrin, the Jewish leaders at that time, consisting of priests and scribes, and they were commanded to quit preaching about Jesus. Their response to that command was, we must obey God rather than human beings. And this particular episode in the Acts of the Apostles supports so much of Catholic or Catholic Christian resistance to misguided authority and Catholic social teaching over the years, especially since Pope Leo XIII in the late 19th century. When civil law contradicts divine law, we, as committed baptized Christians, must obey God's will. So this passage from the Acts calls us to be watchful and to be involved citizens. True patriotism, no matter what country you live in, demands that we Catholics do participate in a democratic process, if you're in a democracy, that at times will call us to challenge laws and public policy in order to improve our country, especially in the past number of years, and especially during the pontificate of Pope Francis, who is constantly calling the church, us, to protect the common good. Now, the story from John's Gospel, which is the very last chapter of John, involves another charcoal fire. The first charcoal fire, remember in the Passion narrative we heard on Good Friday, involved Peter staying warm around the fire and other people recognizing him, and yet Peter 3 times denied he even knew Jesus, and then the rooster crowed. So once again, we hear this fire in which Jesus, after he sees Peter and the other guys go out fishing, they didn't know what to do with this story and the appearances of the resurrected Christ. So he did what was familiar to him. I'm going fishing. And in there is that wonderful story of surprise when Jesus sends them out after they had been out all night. By the way, it is typical even nowadays in the Sea of Galilee to fish at night. Anyway, Peter brings back this huge catch of fish, and once again, we see this Jesus doing something quite remarkable that Jesus does with us many, many times. Once again, he does not throw Peter away. He brings him back to himself. And read the Gospel, chapter 21, in which Jesus said, "Children, have you had any breakfast? Come and have something to eat." And he fixed them fish, and he fixed them bread. He brought Peter and the others back. And that's what the story of Easter victory truly is. Jesus fed the fishermen. He reconciled them with bread and fish. He reconciled them in the context of a meal. And here, in this church of ours, and churches throughout the world, for 2 millennia now, Jesus reconciles us at a table with bread and wine. It is the perfect offering that reconciles the human race to our Creator, through, with, and in Christ. So we see in this Easter story, once again, how the Lord constantly pulls us into himself. Even when we turn away by sinning, the Lord constantly reconciles and forgives and loves us to healing and wholeness. We also hear this weekend from the book of Revelation and yet another vision, and how we are called to serve the Lamb by loving our enemies, by meeting the needs of other people in so many ways, and by resolving conflicts in a non-violent way. We are people of the Eucharist. We are people of peace in the resurrected Christ. I pray for you constantly, and as always, may God fill your hearts, your lives, and your days with peace.